I'm going to go ahead and get started with all five of us. Seven. There's seven of us, including me. And I'll just say thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate, as I said before, this is a time of year that's really busy and lots of fun stuff going on. And I know for tech people especially, it can be a lot with collecting devices and all that. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I'm sticking in the chat the I think part of this is Aspire meeting started at 9. Oh, did not know about that. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Bonnie. Another good reason to have this recorded. Yeah, and thanks for letting me know because I didn't know about that. Okay, so I stuck the link in the chat for the presentation that we're going to talk about, and then I'm also just going to share my screen. I mentioned this in the newsletter, but we are looking at a pretty significant change from how we have done the compliance review in the past. So this is a great time to ask questions. Probably the best thing to do is to put it in the chat. Katie will be watching that, and she can feel free to interrupt if we want to just address questions right in the moment. I want everybody to feel pretty confident with kind of the plan going forward for this year. Some of the specifics might change as far as like which questions we're asking you and stuff like that, but the overall, you can feel confident that this is how it will move forward. So you can see that our title here is the Annual Privacy Practice Benchmark, which is a big change from what we've usually called this event, which is the Annual Privacy Compliance Review. It is a bit of a shift from what we might consider compliance and a shift toward a focus on improving privacy practices. So that's the point of the change in the name. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to review the results from this past year and talk about that and celebrate you guys because you did amazing. And then we want to make sure that we understand changes to board rule and the Government Data Privacy Act that are impacting charters and districts throughout the state of Utah, and understand how that will translate into our new privacy practices benchmark. And then we'll have a brief conversation about the kind of the shift in conceptual thought process behind the compliance versus privacy practices. So start out with a little celebration. This is our results this year. So we had almost 80% of districts and charters, LEAs, fully compliant, meaning that they had everything checked, all the documentation updated, metadata dictionary perfect, all that stuff. And that's like a pretty big accomplishment if you think about it. It represents a lot of work, a lot of teamwork in a lot of cases. And I'm just so thrilled to see that we have such a high level of compliance with our LEAs. So that's awesome. Here's a little bit more of a breakdown so you can see where the different kind of documentation is falling. We did talk about a couple of times before that both the student data collection notice and the data governance plan were kind of sticking points this year, mostly because they both had changes in code numbering, which meant that there were like kind of small details that had to be updated. And then quite a few LEAs had to make some pretty significant changes to their data governance plan. So that's why these two are a little bit lower. But we can see that our annual notice of FERPA and our directory information notice is like amazing. There were only 2 LEAs across the whole state that didn't have a compliant directory information notice. So you guys are amazing. And seriously, thank you so much for the work that you do. Our metadata dictionary is also looking great this year, 86% compliant, which is huge because especially because we were much more picky this year than we were last year. So this is like representing a perfect metadata dictionary. Amazing. So you guys are the best. I just so appreciate the opportunity to work with you and the effort that you put into making these updates. Here's a little congratulations on your hard work. Um, I am trying to like get the hang of AI a little bit more. So I used Gemini to create this picture, and I thought it was hilarious because there's like clearly a cake here that his coworkers have prepared for him, and he's like holding a different cake, like maybe he brought himself or something. So yay for Gemini. I wish that I could present you with a cake um, in honor of your hard work, but I will present you with an AI cake instead. So thank you guys so much for that. Okay, so I do want to talk about some of the key takeaways that we as a team discussed in the course of this compliance review over the past many months. So one thing that I want to talk about is just where this review even came from. So the review that we've been using for many years, 5, 6 years, I think, is based on Board Rule 2774873. So if you are very interested in reading that, you can click on that link. But I'm going to tell you what's in it, so you don't have to worry about it. But the current review is very focused on providing evidence of certain documents, which are the ones that we just kind of looked at. And this rule does a really, really good job of helping LEAs to stay compliant with 2 sections of state law and part of FERPA, which is great. But there are a lot of other laws and best practices that are related to privacy that are not part of those 2 sections and the small parts of FERPA that it covered. And it also doesn't really support anything to do with the new Government Data Privacy Act, which came out last year and had some amendments to it this year. The other key takeaways that we had was just thinking about the time spent. So the work that was done during that compliance review was very focused on small details. So updating code numbers, updating notices, fixing errors or missing information in the metadata dictionary. And I'm not saying that that work isn't important, because it is. But the question that I kind of found myself asking myself was, does this support a holistic privacy program, especially as described in the new Government Data Privacy Act? And I felt like it's so focused on one small area, but all these other areas tend to get missed a little bit. The other thing that we noticed is that the requirements are the same every year, which means that we are consistently every year focusing you or asking you to focus on just one small element of privacy, which means that we are now experts at that element, as showed by the previous graphs. But we have to ask, are we seeing improvement, again, holistically in our privacy programs from year to year? And I think it's, first of all, hard to even answer that question because we're not asking you for those things. But also hard for you guys to focus on that. So we want to explain some of the changes to board rule and the GDPA that impacts this, and kind of keeping in mind what we just talked about, some of those key takeaways. So as we mentioned before, the compliance review comes from board rule, but board rule was actually changed just recently. So prior to now, May of 2025, this is what the board rule required in the compliance review. It required these documents: the data governance plan, the notification of FERPA rights, the directory information notice, the student data collection notice, the metadata dictionary, and evidence that you have a cybersecurity framework. So again, very helpful, important, but one small element of a privacy program. The board rule was just changed, and it's not even updated on the website yet, but it will be soon. And this is what the new board rule says. So first of all, it asks for evidence of implementation of the following. So this is the Student Privacy Act. This is the one that has to do with surveys and collection of sensitive information. The Student Data Protection Act is the one that talks all about what are the requirements for data privacy in schools in Utah. The Government Data Privacy Act, which is the one that applies to all government entities, not just schools. FERPA, which we know and love, right? I love FERPA. The Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, which is the federal version of this Student Privacy Act, in that it talks also about collection of sensitive data and some other things. And other privacy practices as defined by the superintendent, and then finally a cybersecurity framework. So you can see that this shift is pretty significant. We're talking about, 6 documents versus covering all the privacy laws in the state and, the federal laws that impact schools. So this is a really, really significant change. And we want to make sure that the work that we're asking you to do is not just focused on this one small element, but is helping you to implement privacy practices that will help you be compliant with all of the laws. GDPR was introduced, as I mentioned, last year, but it's growing. This past year, there were quite a few additions and amendments that were made. Some of the important ones were an addition of a definition of privacy practices, which is kind of throughout the rest of the law. The addition of an annual report that is due to the state office every December 31st. And then creation of 2 website notices about data collection practices, along with all of the stuff that was already in the bill from last year. So I know that this is an area of, I'm going to say concern. I hope it's not an area of stress, but maybe an area of concern for schools as everybody tries to figure out how to manage compliance with this law, as well as what we're asking you to do. So in looking at the old compliance review, it really doesn't support you in these practices. We want to make sure that you guys are feeling supported and getting what you need in order to improve your privacy practice and have some good stuff that you can report on your annual report. And so that's the goal here in this shift, is we're taking it from one small thing to a much wider range. Are there any questions so far about kind of the background of all of this, the changes in board rule, the changes in GDPR, any of that stuff? I haven't seen anything come in on the chat, but feel free to turn off your mic if you have questions.
Nicole, I have not a question, but every now and then your audio is a little bit choppy. So you might want to turn your camera off. It's not terrible.
Okay, I will turn my camera off. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
How do I do that when I'm sharing my screen? Oh, there we go. You don't even need to see my face right now anyway. Okay. Will you let me know if it gets really crazy, Katie?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Don't be shy putting questions out there if you have questions, but I'm gonna go ahead and move on. So this is the big thing. When I was preparing this presentation, I was like, I'm Steve Jobs. I am putting out the new product that I want you guys all to be so excited about, except that I'm not as exciting as Steve Jobs. But the privacy compliance review that we have known and loved for years is now the annual privacy practices benchmark. And I'm going to go into some detail about what this looks like and how this will impact you guys. So first of all, here's a timeline. This is cute. I don't know how that got there. This is a timeline of what things will look like. In August of each year, or prior to that, we've already determined it for this year, but no later than August, our team will determine an area of focus. There are 5 options: the leadership practices, business practices, data security, professional development, and classroom practices. So one of the things that we were wanting to make sure of is that we are hitting all of these different elements, but that we're not throwing everything at you at once. And so rather than making sure that everything is done all the time, we'll rotate from year to year with a focus on one particular area. In October, just as you're used to, you will receive a Qualtrics survey. But the difference is that instead of asking you to upload documents, this year it will be a self-assessment that will be based on the focus for the year. The self-assessment will have about 10 to 15 questions, and it will ask you to rate your practice from an area or from 1 to 4, based on your confidence in that area. And then the results from that will help you identify where are we doing really, really well, where are some places that we might need a little bit of support. That survey will be available in October, just like it has been for the last few years. And then you'll need to return it in November, just like it has been for the last few years. So when you return this survey, the results of that survey that we get back will include the results of your self-assessment. And then based on the results of the self-assessment, you will identify a goal or a task to be completed by spring. There will be a menu of tasks that you can choose from. If there's something that you are really excited about that's not on the list, you are welcome to choose your own goal or task. But hopefully the menu will be helpful. And it will also include a plan for completion, which is going to include support from USBE. This part, I don't anticipate taking a lot of time. I think that you could go through the self-assessment in maybe 20 minutes. Choosing a goal that if you work with a team might be something that you want to do with the team. And the plan for completion will also be choosing items from a menu. So there's very little here that you will need to create from scratch unless you choose to. It will mostly be just choosing options. The real work will come in between November and May, when you will report back. So from November until May, you'll have time to work on your goal or your task that you've chosen. And there will be options for support and coaching from us, identified by you as far as what you need. And then in May, you will complete a survey to demonstrate completion of your goal or task. This will basically be you providing any evidence that you have, or responding to a survey that will explain what you've been doing to improve your practice over the course of this time. Are there any questions about this timeline or the overall plan before we get into the details of the self-assessment and the task list? Okay, feel free to stop me if you do have questions come up. So as I mentioned before, our team will choose a focus area no later than August, but we've identified it already this year in hopes that if you want to get started a little bit early and have some time to work on this over the summer, you could choose to do so before that November to May window. I know that many of you work through the summer, and it might be a good time to kind of at least get started on some of this stuff. So the focus area for this year will be business practices, and we have 5 standards that go along with that. So business practices is focused on your relationship to third parties and specifically vendors. So the first standard is has implemented a process for vetting online services for data privacy and security. And remember that an LEA is a district or charter school. B2 is the LEA regularly educates its employees about the importance of and expectations for the use of the established vetting process for online services. B3 is the LEA implements contract language and data sharing agreements addressing student data privacy and data security. What we're really talking about here is making sure that you have a data privacy agreement, an NDPA, or a state contract or something that fulfills the floor of Utah state law. B4, the LEA ensures that all business processes associated with student data include enforceable data privacy and security requirements. And B5, the school system maintains a comprehensive, updated metadata dictionary that is publicly viewable on the LEA's website. So for this year, the self-assessment questions will be focused on these 5 areas. There will be 2 to 3 questions for each area that will help you understand how well your LEA is doing in each of those areas. The hope is that the self-assessment will reveal maybe an area of strength for you and an area of improvement. And then based on that result, you will choose a task that will help you improve your practice in that standard. So the self-assessment is based on CoSN's TLE seal. There's a link right here to it. The TLE seal has all the questions for all 5 standard areas. And I will say that ours is pretty modified. So there are some differences. But if you're interested in kind of looking at the CoSN TLE seal and working toward that, you can see the changes and the similarities between this process and their process. So it's based on CoSN's TLE seal. The self-assessment you'll take has 13 questions in which you'll rate your practices out of 4. So 1 for least confidence and 4 for highest level of confidence. Once you take the self-assessment, the results will help you choose a task. And there's a link here to the current task options. I will say that this part is subject to change a little bit. We're not going to have like massive changes, but there might be some additions or modifications here. So this task list, am I still showing my screen, or is it showing the slides?
We're seeing the task list.
Okay, great. So you could look through this task list. You'll see that for each standard, there are 1 or 2 tasks related to that so that you can get a sense of what kind of tasks we're looking for. The very last one, I do want to draw your attention to. This one says basically create or update your metadata dictionary to ensure it's comprehensive, meaning that it includes all third parties with whom you've shared student data. Inventory products, ensure that products are listed in your dictionary, ensure that products have a purpose, justification, and exception. I want to draw your attention to this one because this is basically one of the requirements that we've been asking for the last 6 years. So if you are an LEA who is really still in the process of kind of getting your feet off the ground with a metadata dictionary, maybe you weren't compliant with metadata dictionary for this past year or the previous year, or maybe you're switching to a new ed tech management product or something like that, you could continue to do the same thing that you've been doing for the last few years and focus on just getting your metadata dictionary taken care of. If you are past that and you are compliant with that and you feel really good about your metadata dictionary, then you could look at some of these other options that would allow you to improve your app vetting process, or to create a training program for your staff to understand how app vetting works, or go through your metadata dictionary and make sure every product you're using has a DPA in place. So the idea here is just that you can choose the requirement that will fit your needs best based on that self-assessment. Did I see a question come in the chat, Katie?
No, I just put a link to the task list. No questions
Oh,
in the
lovely.
chat.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah, so hopefully, as I mentioned before, this is subject to change slightly. If you see something on here that you're like, oh, I've been meaning to do this anyway, and I really want to get started working on it, that should be something that you can feel confident going forward with. And then when it comes time to answer the survey, there might be small differences in what might be included in the task, but it won't be like really significant changes. And then the last thing you'll do is identify what kind of support you need. And that might be, hey, I need someone from the student data privacy team to like sit down with me, go through my metadata dictionary and help me get a DPA in place. Or I need someone from the student data privacy team to my school and do a training with my staff. Or it might be, hey, I would really love to work with other LAs across the state and see what they're doing. Or it might even be something as simple as I need some online resources and I can do the rest from here. So you'll be able to choose from a menu of support. You will get back an initial report from our team that just approves your plan. And this will be very straightforward if you're choosing off the menu. If you are wanting to create your own task or goal, then that's something that we will take some extra time to make sure is approved. But otherwise, it will just be kind of a report of what you filled out in the Qualtrics survey. Any questions about this? Okay, great. So these are kind of the layers of support that our team can offer you. Again, the Qualtrics survey will have sort of a menu that you can choose from, or you could, ask something specific or additional. But one-on-one coaching would just be working with somebody from our team, most likely either me or John Lyman, possibly Jeremy Zabriskie, depending on kind of what sort of support and help you need. But we are super excited to be able to work with you guys a little bit more one-on-one and make sure that you're feeling like you're getting what you need. We feel like in prior compliance reviews, we have had an opportunity to do some one-on-one work, but the work has been really, really focused on those minor details. And we're hoping that this work can be more focused on conceptual things. The cohort of same goals will be totally optional, but you could choose to say, hey, I would really love to work with other LEAs in the state that are also doing this same kind of stuff. If there are multiple LEAs that are all saying, hey, I want to work with other people, then we'll match you guys up and you can work on that as you see fit. And we'll also have just webinars, trainings, online resources available that you can access as needed. Okay, did I see? Oh, you're putting the slides in. Thank you, Katie. You're so on top of things. Okay, so that's the logistics of what the review is going to look like. I do want to talk just a little bit about the difference between what compliance will look like compared to how it has looked before. But I do want to make sure that the logistics are clear, everybody understands, and has kind of a sense of what it will look like. And I also want to, if anybody is feeling concerned about this taking more time or resources, I would love to address any of those questions as well. So if anyone has any questions about logistics, time, resources, etc., this would be a great time to bring it up. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come in. So if you do have additional questions, we can bring it up at the end. All right, so here's our last part here is what is the difference between privacy compliance and a privacy practices benchmark? So the compliance review that we've been doing up to this point is, as I mentioned before, very narrow, very focused. So everybody has the same requirements. The result is either a pass or fail. And if you guys, which is probably most of you, if any of you guys have sent in your initial review and then you get an email back from me being like, oh, this is really great, but I still need you to update the purpose on this product in your metadata dictionary. There's no middle ground. You either have every single thing done or you are not fully compliant. So that's kind of how compliance has worked for us. And then there's very narrow options for growth because you basically have one choice, and that choice is keep your documents updated. And as we mentioned before, that's not a bad thing. We want your documents to be updated, but it also doesn't apply to all of this other stuff that makes for a strong privacy program. And I have spoken to many of you that I know are doing really, really great work with a lot of those other areas. but it's not part of this compliance review, which just kind of it doesn't give us a chance to see all the great things that you're doing, and it also means that you're doing two things. So the shift here is going to be to this new benchmark. So the benchmark allows each of you to choose a requirement that will support improvement in your individual privacy practice. So as I mentioned before, if you're just barely getting metadata dictionary off the ground, that's great. Let's focus on that. If you have a really strong metadata dictionary and you would love to go through and make sure everything has a data privacy agreement, then great, let's do that. The goal here is really that whatever you need to be doing anyway will be the goal to work on this. And the result that we're looking for here, oh, Katie, is my audio okay? I just got a message that my internet is unstable.
It's okay. It's every now and then it's a little bit choppy, but it's not bad.
Okay, all right, holler at me if it gets really bad.
Okay.
The result that we're looking for here is not pass fail, it's an improvement from whatever your previous self-assessment was. So what we really want is for you guys to see that whatever number you gave yourself, you know, back in October has now moved up. So it's really just like looking for a PR, like what's your personal best here? And then lastly, there's a lot more options for growth. Instead of us saying you must focus on this one thing, we're saying you tell us what you need support with and we will support you with that. Any questions about the difference here between compliance and the benchmark? Okay. That's all I have for you. I know that I said that this webinar was going to be 90 minutes. I really anticipated that everybody was going to be stopping me every couple seconds, like lots of questions. So I'm assuming one of two things is happening here. Either this was the most amazing presentation anyone has ever seen, or maybe you guys are just kind of trying to absorb all of this new information. I do have time for questions. So if you have questions about logistics, if you have concerns about anything, this is a great time to bring it up. I have heard, as we've kind of talked through these changes over the course of the past year. Okay, thank you, Colleen. That's so helpful to know that that's just kind of part of your process of absorbing. Maybe a couple things that I do want to just identify as we have worked with a variety of stakeholders in getting feedback over the course of the past year on this, is the concern that this is maybe going to take more time, effort, or resources than the previous one. And I really want to reinforce that that is not at all our goal, and that you can, you know, focus on the goals that we have seen in previous compliance reviews if that's a good fit for you. We just feel like for many, if not most of you, I mean, we have an 86% compliant rate with the metadata dictionary, for example. That means that at least 86% of you are feeling really confident with that, and we don't want you to just keep rehashing the same thing. So we're hoping that you can use that same amount of time for work that will be more helpful to your privacy practice, and also that we can provide more meaningful support